My girlfriend told me, make sure your parents don't come to our wedding. They don't fit with our status. So the next day, I canceled a couple of invitations. Hers and her mother's. I'll never forget the day my fiancé, with a mocking smile, said to me, make sure your parents don't come to our wedding. They don't fit with our status. They're poor. My blood boiled, but I didn't say anything. I had a better plan. Before I get to that, let me give you the full context. When I was a kid, my parents were poor, the kind who fought every day to keep hunger at bay. We lived in a modest neighborhood, in a small adobe house with a tin roof that turned into an oven in the summer and leaked like a sieve in the winter. There were no luxuries, sometimes not even the basics. I remember many nights when dinner was a plate of beans with a tortilla, and if we were lucky, a tiny piece of cheese my mom guarded like it was gold. But they never complained. Dad would say, as long as we're together, everything else will work out. Mom would nod, stroking my hair while telling me to eat slowly so I'd feel fuller. They were my world. My dad, James, was a tall, lanky man with skin weathered by the sun. He worked whatever jobs he could find, sometimes hauling sacks at the market, other times helping a neighbor with construction. My mom, Mary, was short with small but strong hands. She washed other people's clothes, sold homemade pies on the corner, or collected cans to sell for a few bucks. They had little education, barely able to read and write, but they had something worth more than any degree: heart. Everything they did for me. Why parents skipped meals so I could have something to eat. Once, when I had a high fever and there was no money for medicine, Dad walked 3 hours to the next town to borrow from a friend. He came back with a bottle of syrup and a bag of oranges someone had given him. "This'll make you better, champ," he said, and he and Mom stayed up all night, making sure my fever went down. They never got married. Not because they didn't want to, but because they couldn't afford it. Even a simple wedding cost money they didn't have. Dad promised Mom a white dress and a celebration with music, but life never gave them a chance. "Someday we'll do it, Mary," he'd say, and she'd smile like she believed him. When I finished middle school, they wanted me to keep studying, but there was no money for college. So I started working. I was 16 and got a job at a small neighborhood store, stocking shelves and carrying boxes. That's where it all began. The store's owner, Mr. Thompson, was an older man who took a liking to me. He said I had spark and knew how to deal with people. He taught me how to run the business, how to negotiate with suppliers, how to treat customers, and so much more. When I turned 19, Mr. Thompson decided to close the store and move to another city with his daughter. Before he left, he said, "This place is yours if you want it. I'll let you have it cheap because I know you'll make it grow." With my savings and my parents' help, I took the chance. It wasn't easy, but I did it. I started small, selling the basics: rice, beans, soap. Then I grew. By the time I was 22, that little neighborhood store had turned into a well-known supermarket in the city, where everyone came to shop. Suddenly, I realized we weren't poor anymore. Me, the son of James and Mary, had money in the bank, millions, enough to buy a house, a car, and give my parents something they'd never had: peace of mind. I moved them into a big house with real floors and a roof that didn't leak. I bought them new clothes, a big TV, a stove they didn't have to light with firewood. But they didn't change. They were still the same: humble, kind, grateful. Dad still carved wood in his spare time, and Mom still cooked beans like nothing had happened. "We don't need more, son. As long as you're okay, we've already won," they'd say. I felt like the luckiest man alive. That is, until I met Emily.it was at a mutual friend's party. I was 23, and she walked in like a movie star. Tall, with long, shiny hair and green eyes that could pull you in. She was beautiful, sure, but she also knew how to move, how to talk. That night, she told me she liked my energy, that I was different. She wasn't rich, I found out later. She came from an average family, the kind that doesn't have much, but doesn't go hungry either. She'd tell me about her life, how she dreamed of making it big, and I'd tell her about mine, how I'd built everything from scratch. She seemed interested, and I felt good with her. Everything seemed perfect. We started dating, and soon we were a couple. We'd go out to dinner, take drives in my car, and she always found a way to make me laugh. She'd say things like, "You're different from everyone else. You've got something special." And me, Having grown up feeling invisible in a neighborhood where no one expected anything from me, I melted at those words. I wanted to give her the best, to make her feel she'd never lack for anything with me. So I invited her into my world to meet the people who mattered most to me, my parents. When Emily arrived, she was wearing a tight dress and high heels that echoed on the marble floor. She looked stunning, but as soon as she walked in, her eyes landed on my parents. She wrinkled her nose like something smelled bad, and her smile twisted into a sneer. Mom greeted her with her usual warmth. "Oh, it's so nice you came, sweetie. Come in, sit down. Can I get you a coffee or a soda?" she said, her hands nervous but her heart wide open. Dad stood up, clumsy, adjusting his too big shirt, and offered his hand. "Nice to meet you, Emily. My son's told us a lot about you," he said with a humble smile. She barely touched his hand, pulling hers back quickly and wiping it on her dress, muttering a hi that sounded half-hearted. She sat on the leather couch, crossed her legs, and looked around, not with admiration for the house, but with disdain for them. "No, thanks, I'm fine," she said sharply when Mom offered coffee again. The afternoon was tense. Mom tried to talk to her, as always, with kindness. "Where are you from, sweetie? What do you like to do?" she asked, setting a plate of biscuits on the table, still wrapped in an old napkin she'd used for years. Emily looked at her like she was a bug. "From around here, nothing special," she said curtly, then added, "So, are they always like this? I mean, this house is nice, but they look like they're straight out of a trailer park." She said it with a cruel little laugh, like it was an inside joke. Mom laughed nervously and said, "Oh, well, we're just simple folks." Emily raised an eyebrow and muttered, "Simple's an understatement." Dad tried to connect, showing her a piece of wood he was carving. "Look, I make these things. It's a hobby," he said shyly. She looked him up and down, from his ill-fitting shirt to his worn shoes, and said, "How quaint. Seems like they don't know how to spend their son's money." I tried to smooth things over, talking about how I'd bought the house for them, but she wasn't listening. When we left, she got in the car, fixed her hair, and said, "Seriously, your parents? They're so basic. They reek of small town." She said it with a twisted smile, like she expected me to agree. I felt a stab in my chest, but stayed quiet. I thought it was a one-time thing, that she'd come to love them in time. I was wrong. After that, Emily made it clear she couldn't stand my parents. She knew everything they had, the house, the clothes, the food, came from me, and that made her see them as leeches. "Your parents again? Let's just go out alone. I can't stand seeing them in those outfits," she'd say, wrinkling her face. One Christmas, Mom gave Emily a tablecloth she'd hand-stitched. It was beautiful, with red and green flowers that took her weeks to make. "I made it thinking of you, sweetie, so you'd have something nice for your home," she said, her eyes shining. Emily took it, glanced at it for a second, and said, "Oh, thanks, but I don't know if I'll use it. It's not my style." She set it aside like it was trash, and Mom went quiet, clasping her hands in her lap. Dad looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that wasn't just sadness, but disappointment. But me, like a fool, I did nothing. I didn't want Emily to get mad, didn't want to lose her. Over time, I saw that Emily despised them for who they were. Humble, marked by poverty, even though I gave them everything. She didn't see their love, only their rough hands, their mismatched clothes, their simple ways. And I, blinded by love, let her walk all over them. Time passed, and one night, under the lights of a fancy restaurant she picked, I pulled out the ring I'd bought and said, "Emily, will you marry me?" My heart was in my throat. She smiled, that smile that made me weak, and said, "Yes, of course." The people around us clapped, and I felt like I was on top of the world. I thought we'd finally build something together, that she'd understand what my parents meant to me. How wrong I was. 3 days before the wedding, while we were finalizing details, Emily called me to her place. She was sitting in her living room, a glass of wine in her hand, looking at me with that smile I now know was pure theater. "Listen, I need you to do something for me," she said like it was no big deal. "Make sure your parents don't come to our wedding. They don't fit with our status. They're poor." She said it without hesitation, her tone half mocking, half commanding. I stared at her, waiting for her to say it was a joke, but she didn't. Her green eyes were cold, hard. My blood boiled, and I felt the ground shift under me. But I didn't say anything. I nodded, turned around, and left. That night, I didn't sleep. I cried, thinking about my parents, everything they'd done for me. I thought about their rough hands, their tired smiles, the love they'd given me without asking for anything in return. And I thought about Emily, my fiancée, and the love I had for her, but also how she'd trampled on my parents. That's when it hit me. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to be her puppet anymore. The next day, I got up early. I called the wedding planner, a serious guy I'd hired because Emily wanted something classy. I told him I needed to change the guest list. Remove 2 people, Emily and her mother. I said, my voice steady even though I was shaking inside. He hesitated. Are you sure? The bride, yes, I'm sure. They're not coming. I'm paying, I decide. I cut him off. I hung up before he could argue. Then I took a deep breath and went to see my parents. I told them to come to my wedding, and they agreed. The wedding day arrived. The church was decorated just as Emily wanted. White flowers everywhere, expensive candles, a choir that cost a fortune. The guests, my friends and a few of her acquaintances, filled the pews. My parents arrived early, nervous but happy. Mom wore a simple dress I bought her, but with her usual sandals. Dad had on his same mis-buttoned shirt, his shoes worn out. I saw them sit at the back, humble as ever, and felt a mix of love and anger. They deserved to be at the front, not hidden. Then the chaos started. Emily arrived in a white car, wearing the wedding dress I'd paid for, looking like a queen. Her mother followed, with a smug look that turned my stomach. But when they tried to enter, the security guards, who I'd given clear instructions to, blocked their way. Sorry, you're not on the list, one said firmly. Emily turned red. What? I'm the bride, you idiot. Let me through, or I'll sue, she screamed, while her mother chimed in. You don't know who you're dealing with. The guests started whispering, and I heard it all from inside. I stepped out to the entrance, wearing the suit I'd picked for my so-called wedding. Emily saw me and lunged at me. What's going on? These guys won't let me in. Fix this now, she shrieked, her eyes blazing. I looked at her, calm for the first time in years. There's nothing to fix, Emily. There's no wedding between us. It's over, I said, my voice steady. She staggered like I'd hit her. What? Are you crazy? You can't do this to me, she yelled, while her mother jumped in. You're an ungrateful jerk. My daughter deserves better than you and your filthy parents. That's when I snapped. My filthy parents? They're worth 1,000 times more than you. They gave me everything, worked themselves to death for me, while you, Emily, just insulted them, treated them like dirt. Did you really think I'd cut them out of the wedding? You know what? I don't want you near me or them ever again, I said, pointing at her. Emily collapsed, literally. She fell to her knees, her white dress dragging in the dirt, and started sobbing. No, please. I love you. Don't do this, she begged, her tears seeming more angry than sad. Her mother yanked her arm, hurling insults, but I wasn't listening anymore. I turned around and walked back into the church. The guests were stunned, but I didn't care. I walked to the altar where the priest stood, confused. I motioned for my parents to come forward. They looked at each other, unsure, but came up, trembling. I knelt before them, tears in my eyes. Dad, Mom, you never had a wedding because there wasn't money. But today, this is for you. I want you to get married here, now, like you always deserved, I said, my voice breaking. Mom covered her mouth, crying. Dad put a hand on my shoulder, his eyes glistening. Son, what are you saying? He murmured. I'm saying I love you, and no one's going to walk over you ever again. Please, let me give you this, I replied. The priest, after a moment's hesitation, smiled and said, Well, if they want to. My parents looked at each other, and Mom nodded, with a smile I hadn't seen in years. Yes, James, let's get married, she whispered. The ceremony was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Mom, in her sandals and simple dress, and Dad, with his mis-buttoned shirt, held hands at the altar. The priest spoke. They vowed eternal love, and when they said, I do, the guests cheered, some crying. I stood beside them, my heart full. Emily and her mother were gone, defeated, but that didn't matter anymore. My parents, who'd given me everything, were having their moment, and I'd made it happen. When they walked out of the church, hand in hand, Mom hugged me, so tight I could barely breathe. "Thank you, son. I never thought I'd have this," she said, sobbing. Dad gave me a pat on the back, wordless, but his eyes said it all. That night, we had a simple party at home, with beans and biscuits, the way they liked it. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Emily tried calling me later, sending messages, but I didn't respond. I wasn't her toy anymore. My parents were my priority, and no one would ever belittle them again. Update 1. Hey, thanks to everyone who's supported me for the choice I made. It's been 3 months since the wedding day, or rather, since the day my parents finally had the wedding they always deserved. I still smile when I think about it. Mom in her worn sandals and Dad in his misbuttoned shirt, holding hands at the altar with tears of joy worth more than all the gold in the world. That image is burned into my mind, and every time I recall it, I know I did the right thing. But things haven't been entirely smooth since then. Emily didn't give up as quickly as I'd hoped. A week after I left her at the church entrance, she started bombarding me with messages. At first, they were harsh. "You're an idiot. You'll regret this. You don't know what you lost. You and your parents are the same, just lucky nobodies." I read them and deleted them, never replying. But then her tone changed. She started writing things like, "Please forgive me. I was foolish. I know I messed up with your parents. I won't do it again, I swear. Give me another chance. I love you." Some days she'd send 10 messages in a row, full of promises and pleas. Once she even called, crying, saying she'd changed, that she now understood how important my parents were to me. I heard her shaky voice through the speaker, but didn't answer. I hung up and blocked her number. It wasn't just that I didn't believe her, though, honestly, I didn't believe a word. It was that I didn't want her in my life anymore. Emily had shown her true colors, and there was no going back. My parents deserve respect, and I deserve someone who saw them the way I did, as giants, not as trash. So I stopped reading her messages, stopped thinking about her. For me, Emily was the past, a mistake that taught me never to betray myself or my family again. Life moved on. The supermarket kept growing, and I focused on work and spending time with my parents. They were happier than ever. After their wedding, they became inseparable, like real newlyweds. Mom started stitching more tablecloths, but now for her and Dad, and she'd set them on the big dining table with pride. Dad kept carving wood and even made a frame for their wedding photo, which now hangs in the living room. "Look, son, now we're husband and wife for real," Mom would say, laughing, and Dad would nod with that quiet smile of his. Seeing them like that filled my chest with peace. And then, 2 months ago, I met Sarah. It was at the supermarket, just another day. She's the inventory manager, a girl who'd been working there for months, but I'd never really talked to much. That day, I saw her checking boxes in the warehouse, a notepad in her hand, her hair tied back in a messy ponytail. I went over to ask about stock, and we ended up chatting. I don't know how it happened, but suddenly we were laughing about something silly, and her brown eyes crinkled in a way that made me want to keep seeing her. Sarah's different. She doesn't have Emily's polish, doesn't try to impress anyone. She's simple, but not the kind who's ashamed of it. She works hard, knows what it's like to earn things, and when I told her my story about my parents, the wedding, she listened with an attention Emily never gave me. "Your parents sound amazing," she said, and it wasn't just talk. I saw it when I invited her to the house one afternoon. That was a month ago. Sarah showed up with a bag of oranges she'd bought on the way. "To share," she said. Mom greeted her with her usual big hug, and this time there were no sneers or disdain. Sarah sat with us in the kitchen, drank coffee from Mom's chipped mugs, and ate biscuits with beans like it was the most normal thing in the world. When Dad showed her one of his wood carvings, she didn't laugh or look at him oddly. "That's beautiful. My grandpa used to carve. I love it," she said, and started asking him questions with genuine interest. Mom even taught her to stitch for a bit, and they ended up laughing like they'd known each other forever. That night, when I drove her home, Dad said, "That girl's got a good heart, son." And Mom added, "Yeah, and she knows how to love people for who they are." Sarah and I have been going out for 2 months now. It's not long, but things feel right. There's no rush, no drama. We grab burgers at the corner, walk in the park, and sometimes hang out at home with my parents, watching TV or playing cards. Today, as I write this, I'm in the living room. My parents are in the kitchen, laughing about something Dad said. Sarah's coming over soon. She said she's bringing a cake to celebrate the supermarket's best month yet. I look around and think about everything I've been through. The poverty, the hard work, my parents' sacrifices, the mistake with Emily, and now this. A quiet life with people who matter. I don't need anything more.
Subscribe for more daily stories.